My 29M parents, 60F/61M, want me to reach out to my no-contact sister, 27S, and it blew up yesterday. Yesterday, I, 29M met my parents, 60F/61M for a hike with my wife, 28F As we were hiking, my dad and I got a bit ahead of my mom and wife, and he brought up a topic we've been circling for a few weeks. They want me to reach out to my estranged sister for them. My sister, 27S has been estranged from our family for over a year. My sister has suffered from severe depression since we were teenagers. My parents not having any previous experience with depression did, in my opinion, the best they could. They took her to therapy, tried antidepressants, and my mom was especially always a listening ear. Were they perfect? Definitely not. But they made an conscious effort to help her get to a better place. Since her teenage years their relationship has always been rocky. Personally, it wasn't until I went to college and had a suicidal roommate that I really began to develop a true understanding/empathy toward mental illness. When we were kids my sister could be very aggressive and cruel towards me, so I began distancing myself as we got older. Our relationship was never great, but was really bad throughout middle/high school. It wasn't until we had both graduated college that we really started talking and attempting to foster a relationship. Our early adult relationship went in ebbs and flows of talking. To be frank, it's always been a bit of walking on eggshells with her. We'd be having a pleasant conversation, but after 15 minutes it'd go sour really quick. I was never sure what I could say or talk about with her, even though I'd try to establish triggers and topics we should avoid. A few years ago she started opening up to me about our childhood and wanted me to confirm that our parents were abusive people. I told her I couldn't agree with that experience and that I had a great relationship with mom and dad. I told her though that I understand we may have had different experiences of the same situations and I would listen to her and be there to talk if she need. For the next few years, we'd have the occasional conversation about, do you think mom and dad are abusive now? What about this situation? It all exploded after a family vacation to my uncle's ranch house. We all agreed to bring food, had rented a boat at a nearby lake, etc. She didn't bring food, slept in extremely late every day and make us late to scheduled activities, was very cruel to her boyfriend and his family in front of us, and picked fights with almost everyone in attendance. After we all went home my mom called her and let her know that her behavior was very frustrating for all of us and to see what her deal was. You can guess how that conversation went. My sister called me in tears, begging me to admit that they were abusive and terrible parents. I told her again that I couldn't agree with, but respect her emotions/her different experiences and was there for her to talk/listen it out. We went back and forth for a while, but eventually I suggested that she just take a breather and give herself some time to cool off and heal. Maybe a month or two of minimal or no contact with them to figure out a plan and talk with them. She said she'd sleep on it. The next day I get a text that she doesn't want to talk with me anymore and she regrets our conversation. My parents got something similar. Over the course of the last year-ish I've had to deal with daily and weekly phone calls about her with my parents. I finally got my parents to go therapy, thank God, and I felt everything was moving in the right direction. While I wish I could be there for my sister in a more active way, without having to condemn my parents, I really hope this time for her has been healing and that she's finding a healthier way to live, even if it doesn't include us. So back to the hike. My dad had been hinting that he wants me to try and contact her for a few weeks, but he thought our marsh hike would be the appropriate time to bring it up. I tell him that I don't think it's a good idea to reach out and force a conversation. We know from two older cousins of mine that my sister is still alive and doing her own thing. He starts getting a bit loud and talking over me, and I ask him to slow down and listen to me for a minute. I say, she asked us to not contact her, so I want to respect her wishes, and that if she does decide she wants to talk with us I want her to feel like she can trust me. Part of that trust in my opinion is respecting her wishes. So I say I won't do it. My dad lost it like I've never seen him act before. I was completely in shock. He started saying we're $% ring dying here and you won't help us. I guess he forgot about the last year. I'd do anything for family and you won't try to talk to her for 60 seconds for us, etc. Told him again I don't think it's the right thing to do. I also said what's the plan if she answers the phone? Do I tell her that we miss her and want to talk? Are you ready to apologize to her? Will you fight her and drive her father away? What's the plan? Of course, he didn't have any answers to these questions and continued to rant. I told him that I couldn't talk to him while he was like this, and if he wanted to talk like adults he needed to calm down. I want to help them get through this, but this isn't helpful for us or her. Started back down the trail toward the parking lot and bumped into my wife and mother. My mother went to console my dad and my wife and I went a separate way and talked. We all met in the parking lot at the end and he gave me a half apology / continued talking about it. Tears were shed, more angry comments were said, and eventually I just stopped talking, so we all left. My parents have both since texted me apologies and that they feel sick about what happened and to contact them back. It's the first real fight I've ever really had with them, so I'm taking some time to meditate on the situation and come back with a clear head. I know they're in deep pain and at the end of their rope with this, but it doesn't excuse my dad's behavior toward me. I can forgive them because I know I have no understanding of the pain of losing a child, but I have to make sure that if I continue to be there for them I'm not treated poorly or breaking my sister's boundaries. How can I /29M help my parents? 60F/61M navigate having an estranged child, 27F and get them the help they need before our relationship hits a hard place. How can I take care of myself in this situation better? Too long didn't read. I, 29M, have an estranged sister, 27F There is a lot of history and difficult issues. My parents, 60F/61M want me to contact her for them, but I said no because I want to respect her wishes. My dad blew up at me and I'm trying to understand how to proceed with our relationship / family troubles. Edit, since I've gotten a few messages about this I want to clarify, I've never told my sister that her feelings of abusive are invalid. I've shared with her that I respect what she has shared with me, but I can't validate experiences for her since I don't share the same shared experience of abuse from our parents. I've told her I don't feel like I was abused and I don't see our parents as abusive, but respect that she has a different experience and won't attempt to convince her otherwise. Edit, within the edit, I also can't validate for my parents that they weren't abusive parents. They weren't to me, but they were to my sister. There is no right answer, just what they're willing to choose to accept and acknowledge for themselves. I can't be the bridge for my sister's abuse or my parents' non-abuse. That is journey they can only discover between the three of them and I need to get out. Abuse can take a lot of different faces, and because a person doesn't feel abused doesn't mean it didn't happen to someone else. I do think abuse and a person being an abuser is a very nuanced thing and it varies greatly between people's individual experiences. I don't consider my parents intentionally abusive people, but people who are capable of committing abusive acts. Whereas my sister experienced things that would make them intentional abusers to her. In a similar vein, my sister is the same. She abused me as a kid, maybe out of anger, maybe out of spite, maybe because she was a struggling kid who just needed to lash out. I personally don't consider her my abuser, at least not anymore now that I've healed and grown. I pity her and know she has struggled for a long time. I know I've probably been a bully or abuser to a different person at least once, if not more than once in my life. We all abuse each other in society because we've all been abused and spread our anger, pain, frustration on each other in known and unknown ways. I think the label of abuser and the quick calls to abandon people because of a situation can be rash. Obviously it depends on the severity of the situation and those involved. I'm not going to cut my parents off, but I do need to establish stronger boundaries with them so I'm not in the middle of this situation any longer. I need to continue to support my sister by not contacting her and letting her find her own healing process and peace, even if it means I never talk with her again. Finally, I do want to say thank you to everyone who has commented, shared their personal story, and challenged my comments/post. This is a much more intimate/detailed situation than a single Reddit post can solve and deal with. I appreciate the kind words, the tough words, and everything in between. It's a lot to process and has helped me formulate some of my thoughts and given me new questions to ask myself. While I have this mini stage, I'll just say this: be good, be patient, be kind to one another. We all can be better to one another if we stay aware and allow ourselves to accept change in front of us. I may have missed it, but did your sister ever mention what they did to her that was abusive? Do you have any examples of what she said was abusive? Bits and pieces, but a lot of it was her trying to get me to agree that I saw our parents as abusive too. Some of the things she mentioned was them not understanding her depression and the way they treated her boyfriends. I don't have any answers to your questions. I just want to say that I think you are asking the right questions and are really demonstrating high levels of empathy and self-respect in this situation. It is impressive and admirable. Don't know you, or this situation in the intimate and nuanced way that you do, but just from reading this I'm confident that you have the ability to make healthy choices for yourself and your loved ones. Good luck. 3. It sounds like you've been pretty introspective about whether or not your parents were abusive, so I think it's fair to put that aside for now. I think you're doing a great job. You're respecting the boundaries your sister set and you're setting your own boundaries with your parents. Would go further and tell your parents not only will you not contact your sister, but also that she is not a topic of conversation for the three of you to have at all anymore. You can't know what their relationship felt like to the people in it, and so this is really between your sister and your parents, and it's not fair for them to try to get you to intervene or validate their feelings that they did nothing wrong. I feel sad for Op that a lot of people are poking holes in his life story when he's the one who has been going to therapy and been keeping really level-headed this whole discussion. Stick to what you know to be true, since this has been what you have reflected, meditated, and gone to therapy for. You're doing a great job keeping those boundaries. Parents can be abusive even though they only want what's best for the child, and although we should hold them responsible for that, I really believe that most parents aren't intentional with abuse. From personal experience, my mom is emotionally, verbally, and physically abusive, but I see all of that stems from my grandmother and her mother. In the end, they are all just victims of the same vicious cycle, and I think it's important to recognize that. I respect how you also look at the intent of your parents, because we are all just human. We can be their whole sun and stars but still be abused because they were taught tough love. Think about your family background, but if parents grew up poor and don't want their children to experience the same hardships as they did, most tend to lose sight of what matters to the kid to make sure they succeed. You don't need to help patch things up between your sister and parents, and I also believe that it is best for everyone to let go of her and respect her decision. What I think should need patching up is your own mental health as well as your parents. I hope they are consistent with therapy. Boyfriend has no real interests and, aside from me, no real friends/relationships. His main goals in life usually revolve around providing for me. He also doesn't get along with my friends. Should I be concerned? I, F20 / have been with my boyfriend, M20 / for 2.5 years now. I should start by prefacing that as a partner, he is amazing. He supports me in all my endeavors and is always my #1 cheerleader. For a long time, I suffered from low self-esteem and confidence problems, and he was always there to prop me up and provide words of support whenever I needed it. Also, he is adamant about the fact that I should be pursuing the things I love and never discourages me from being with the people I love or doing the things I love. Despite this, over the past 2 years, it became clear to me that he had no real interests and no real friends. He has no desire for things outside of the relationship, and when asked what he wants in life, he always states, "For you to be happy." In his free time, he games and listens to music, both of which he says he does simply to pass the time, rather than out of love for either one. When we first met, he had talked about being depressed in the past. He feared that his lack of passion or emotion toward people and things made him subhuman, and he would often cry about feeling less than because of this. Ever since we started dating, he hasn't had these crying fits, and he says he is happier than he has ever been. While I love him and am glad to be with him, The fact that he has nothing meaningful outside the relationship worries me, and I am scared to bring this up as this would confirm his beliefs that his lack of passion is problematic. Due to having a rough childhood growing up, he doesn't have a close relationship with his parents and siblings and is not interested in having one. When I am over, I can tell that his family is trying to reach out to him, but he is dismissive at these attempts. He states that he doesn't hate them, but rather feels indifferent toward them. Additionally, he states that it is far too late for them to pursue a relationship with him after they had neglected him so much while he was growing up. In terms of friends, he has no meaningful connections with those around him. He has online friends that he games with, but, when asked, he will say that he feels no real connection with them and he wouldn't miss them if they were to disappear one day. If we were to get married, I feel as if he wouldn't have anyone on his side come to the wedding. Due to all this, it makes it hard for him to connect with my friends. I am the type to hold my friends and family very dearly, and it pains me to see that the two don't get along. Since he doesn't have any real interests, he finds it tiresome and boring to talk with people about these sorts of things. Additionally, he has the type of personality that can be hard to get along with in my social circles. We grew up in two very different social circles. I grew up in a very traditional, conservative household, and he basically grew up on the internet, so we have experiences with different crowds. Because of this, I feel as if he doesn't know quite how to assimilate into my friend group, and I end up feeling bad for bringing him to outings since I feel like it is uncomfortable for both parties, and in order for them to get along, I would have to ask him to pretend to be someone that he isn't. Additionally, I do feel the pressure of being the sole supplier of his happiness. He won't ever do things for himself, and it can be hard to be the only person ever making plans or ever wanting to do something. I wish he had the passion and motivation to want to do things for himself. Also, I feel that if I were to ever break up with him, I would be taking away the one thing in life that brings him joy. I just wish he would be able to latch onto something or someone else that he finds value in his life other than myself. He never had anything in the past, and I fear that he will never find something in the future. What should I do? Too long didn't read. My boyfriend does not have any meaningful passions or interests. The work that he does is meant simply to pass the time, and the one thing that brings him joy in life is seeing me happy, and he does everything in his power to do that. He also does not have any real friends, and this combination has made it hard for him to get along with my friends. The pressure of being his sole supplier of happiness has also been a great source of stress for me. He sounds depressed. But the question that comes to the forefront of my mind is that if he has no passions or interests or connections to anyone but you, what is it about him that you find attractive? Honestly, it sounds like he needs therapy. Is that something he might be willing to do? I don't think there's anything you can do for him except suggest he talk to someone who can help him. It sounds like the neglect he experienced as a child has made it hard for him to connect or trust others, especially considering he has online friends but says he doesn't care if they suddenly disappear. I think that, coupled with his previous depression, probably stunted his personal development as far as a personality/interests/hobbies/passions. It's also not uncommon for people who experienced childhood emotional neglect/trauma to focus their energy on others rather than themselves. Honestly, it's pretty likely he is still depressed or dissociating and doesn't realize, because it's not active depression but passive depression. You can't push anyone to do anything they don't want to, but I think encouraging him to see a psychologist that specializes in CPTSD or childhood emotional neglect/trauma would help him with personal growth and discover who he is as a person. It'll be hard and take work, but coming from personal experience, it is so worth it. This is the best answer. I'm 35 and wish I had gotten help at 20. A traumatic childhood teaches you to be small and quiet. Having needs and wants gets you in trouble, so you learn to mostly stop having them. Whatever behavior the parent wants is what you learn to be. It's impossible to dream in such an environment. Over the years you get used to living like that. Be gentle with the conversation about getting help. It really could open up a whole new world for him though. I don't think this is a huge issue as long as he isn't holding you back from pursuing your interests and spending time with your friends. But I'm biased, because you could be describing me. I went through an abusive relationship and lost most of my friends because of it. I don't get along with most of my family. I find it taxing to fake interactions, as that's a big part of my job. So I don't love parties where I have to small talk and be on. I had a big interest in meeting my so's friends because I feel like it's important to be on friendly terms, and I was trying to foster connections that had friendship potential at my job before the pandemic. Now, it's a lot more difficult obviously. It's at most a yellow flag. Something he can work on. Therapy can be very helpful. I know it helped me and will continue to do so in the future, when I can afford it again. But side point, I did catch your comments about being disappointed he doesn't respond positively to his family reaching out. That isn't for you to judge or push. They mistreated him to the point he has trouble connecting with other people. Don't push him to forgive them if that isn't what he wants. This is a come to Jesus talk. You can have boyfriend. I love you and I'm so grateful for your cheerleading, but I am concerned cannot be your only source of emotional support. I think you need to go to therapy and work on developing some interests outside of me. This relationship feels unbalanced and I want to make sure we both have support and community outside of each other. Boyfriend admitted I was a rebound and he never had feelings for me. I, 23F, just ended a short relationship with a narcissist, 26M. It started as FWB 2.5 months ago. Before we first met in person, we acknowledged neither of us was looking for anything too long-term or serious. I'm leaving the city for a PhD next fall. He didn't clarify why on his end, but I figured maybe he was too busy with finishing med school and working on his startup to get invested in anything. Throughout our FWB, he initiated texting all day every day, sometimes triple texting me and FaceTiming me to make sure I got home safe. We had a ton in common research-wise and in our witty banter. He kept me in the loop on everything. So many inside jokes and voice note exchanges. He even took me camping when I said I'd never been. He told me multiple times I was an absolute delight, so unbelievably smart and sexy, the best he's ever had. Can't stop thinking about me, wished we were cuddled up. In my mind, it seemed like he'd fallen harder than he'd anticipated and was making a ton of time for me despite his busy schedule. He'd ask me to spend the entire weekend over at his place and work to finish as much as possible before I got there. He got hair products, so I could braid his hair and watch shows with him. That kind of thing. He even deleted his Tinder in front of me unprompted because he said he didn't need it anymore. So after 2.5 months of seeing each other exclusively, I start to develop feelings for him. It really hit me when we went kayaking and someone asked if we were married or dating and he laughed and said we're just friends. I thought back to us holding hands in a tent and falling asleep together, and it just didn't feel that casual. So I asked him a week later if he was interested in seeing where this goes and said I wasn't sure I could continue much longer being physically engaged since I'd started to develop feelings. He replied that we were indeed practically dating and that he enjoyed his time so much with me. He said he still wasn't sure about long distance or anything too serious quite yet, but what we had was definitely more than a FWB. He then asked me if I would go out with him. I said yes, and he amped up the romance even more over the week. He thanked me for being so open and honest, calling this extremely attractive and reassuring. When we met up again, he had set up a massage area for me and was calling me babe. He told me everything was on him for the weekend. We had great sex per usual and cuddled up inside with some food. The next day, I asked if we should continue the conversation about dating in person since it transpired over text. This is where the truth came out. I told him about my past relationships, and he'd hinted at his, but kept it brief and didn't lament, so I'd honestly thought he'd moved on. Holy shit, was I wrong. He starts by saying he got out of an 8-year relationship 8 months ago, 3 years long distance. He thought he would marry this girl, but then when he started actually thinking about proposing, realized he wanted a Muslim wife to maintain the household since he wasn't disciplined enough to, had no idea he wanted to become a more conservative Muslim since he was, you know, fucking me, so he broke up with her. He then told me I was a rebound, and he didn't have feelings for me after I pushed him on what this meant in our context. He said he reacted impulsively over text when he asked me out because he didn't want to lose the distraction I provided from his ex, and maybe the reason he treated me like a girlfriend is because that's all he's known for 8 years. But he did not have feelings for me. He said I proved to him that there were other smart, Bo today I fucked up women in the world, and when he was with me, he wasn't thinking about his ex. He did concede that maybe he knew in the back of his mind he was treating me like a girlfriend, but didn't want to acknowledge it. I told him the reason I began the discussion via text was to give him time to think free of any biased dispositions on my end. I asked how could he ethically ask me out and game a relationship for a week. He even acknowledged that if I hadn't brought it up again, he wouldn't have said anything. He figured we'd have either broken up organically, because of LDR, or he'd eventually come clean yet again about the type of wife he's looking for. I then told him he was selfish and manipulated me into whatever arrangement would get me to continue having sex with him. Yes, we said we were FWB, but he wanted a girlfriend experience without any commitment or clear communication. To straight up ask me to be his GF rather than ending things and finding someone else to fuck is mind-boggling. I packed up my things and left without acknowledging his goodbye or tears. I'm more stunned than hurt, but what a lesson on the downsides of going with the flow. I'm glad I left with my dignity. For now a dating break, but eventually on to better things. TL, Dr. FWB to relationship to realizing I'm just a rebound. He was projecting a relationship onto to continue fucking me and distracting himself from an 8-year relationship ending. Good for you knowing your worth. I hope you don't feel humiliated because you shouldn't. You are a strong woman. Stronger than that weak man. You were honest, you communicated to him clearly. It was him and how he treated you gave you the feels. I hate when men do this, that act all wow what you're doing. I told you it was FWB when their actions were very different. So glad you brought it up again. How long would he have led you on for? You are strong. Good luck moving to the new city and hope you do well with your PhD. Stay strong, but sending a hug because still stings. This guy isn't worthy of having a Muslim, Catholic, Buddhist, atheist, you name it, wife. Manipulating someone like this is a horrible thing, and he better learns how to do chores inside a house by himself, because no women deserve to deal with a guy like this. It's good that you're more stunned than hurt, but it's really sad that even your good memories with him will be tainted by the thought that it wasn't real. Good luck up and good riddance to your ex. This is the kind of guy who will browbeat a woman from his own culture into behaving like a model submissive housewife and cheat on her constantly. What a trash fire of a human being. I know you're hurting and you have every right to, but you just dodged a heck of a bullet. He was even dumb enough to admit what a failure of a person he was to your face. Wow. Block him and don't doubt you did the right thing. The things some people can do to others is astounding, but don't get wrapped up in asking why. There is a real trap there, because there will never be answers worth the effort. The longer you chew over how something like that could happen, the longer you delay the healing. Some people are just garbage. Just focus on yourself. You exited with your head held high. That's worthy of praise. You'll find someone who cherishes you as they should. Thank you for the kind note. Honestly, I think he wanted to take some of the blame away from himself by basically labeling himself a bad person. It makes it easier to separate your bad actions from the responsibility you hold for them. But like you said, I can't get into all of the whys and nuance, which is totally my tendency. I'm counting myself lucky and honestly feel so bad for the girl he was with for 8 years. The only reason I gave him any feedback was so he'd hopefully not do this to anyone else. But who knows? Not my problem anymore. Sending good vibes your way, and thanks so much again for the encouragement. Are you uncertain about leaving him? Don't be. Your assessment at the end was absolutely spot on, and echoed what I thought to myself as I was reading up to it. Was exactly your age and fresh out of college when a guy did the same to me. He manipulated me, played out a relationship for a week, then coldly and maliciously ghosted me on the day of my college graduation. I tell you what, there was a split second where I wondered if I would work through it with him. I needed a place to live, so I set up a meeting with a girl from Craigslist who had a room to let. And what I found out was that I got involved with him on the night he pulled the exact same behavior, at a party, on this girl. In fact, he even told me and our friends there about how it happened because she got really crazy and intense. The girl said, "I like you and let's be roommates on one condition, he never comes here." He would not leave me alone for over a month. And yes, that means he was doing it while he started getting on with me. I mean, it was really a blessing that I had to make a decision then and there about here. I wanted a cool roommate and a place to live, or the potential of more bullshit from him. Easy choice. He wanted a Muslim wife to maintain the household since he wasn't disciplined enough to, had no idea he wanted to become a more conservative Muslim since he was, you know, fucking me. He does not want to be a more conservative Muslim. He wants a house slave wife. OMG, the whole post. It is mind-boggling. He wanted his cake. He thought he could have his cake and eat it too with you. So he did. Disabuse him of that notion. You're probably right. Every woman he's dated so far has been very successful and ambitious. The prototypical modern, Western woman. This last bit you wrote is exactly what I told him. He wants his cake and to eat it too. But he can't have both. He can't maintain the emotional and physical ties of a relationship while not maintaining sincere attachments or an ability to commit long term. Either stay single, find a fuck buddy, or find a wife. He wants a wife to maintain prayer schedules and keep religion at the center as he's failed to do himself since leaving home. It's pathetic he expects to outsource all this responsibility to his future wife.